Hi everyone, this is our breakdown of how to use this theme graphic organizer. As I go through how to use the organizer, I will also focus in on some important things that you need to be thinking about as you fill it out. Hopefully your annotations that you did should be helpful for this, and I recommend that while you're doing this that you go back and reference the story. The story, of course, is linked to the first page of this slideshow. So let's go ahead and get looking. I'm going to do my example for the Legend of the Three Sisters, just so that you can see how it's done, but your work is authentically yours. So for the Legend of the Three Sisters, I'm going to focus in specifically on the oldest sister. Okay? And so for this, I'm going to recall a detail from the story that's relevant to the theme. So I'm not even going to look at this yet. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to fill out this part here at the top. So you notice down here does coincide with these things, but in order to really do this, I need to know the theme. So I'm going to fill out this top part first, determine the theme, and then go back and support my theme with evidence that's relevant. So what is my character's goal in this particular case? She wants to find her sisters. All right. So her conflict or her problem is, of course, the fact that her sisters keep going missing. So she has a couple of things. So she has an interest in a young man, but her sisters are disappearing. So her whole conflict is that her sisters are disappearing and she is alone. So she's interested in this young man. Her and her sisters have been watching him. And then slowly but surely, remember, her sisters all go missing. Okay? So now we're going to look into what is our resolution for this story. So how does she solve the conflict? Well, because she's lonely, she follows the boy home. So her idea is that I'm lonely, I'm going to follow this young man home. There she finds her sisters. So her conflict is that, she has this interest in this young man, but her sister's disappearing and she's all alone. So her big thing going on here is that mostly is her internal conflict of her being alone or, lonely. Okay? And then because she's lonely, so because of her conflict, she follows the boy home. And then lo and behold, she's not lonely anymore because the young man invites her to stay with him, and she finds her sisters. So the conflict and how she solves it kind of shows you the theme here. So the theme in this particular case, because this is a fable, so the theme's going to look a little bit different. Let's see. I think we could go with something a little, you want something universal. So in this particular case, our theme is about loneliness and wanting to be together, okay? Because she wanted to be together either with her sisters or together with the young boy or the young man. So the theme here is if you are lonely, we can say we're going to take a chance. Usually that chance works out for the best. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say is my theme for this story. Really, since it's a fable, it teaches me about how Native Americans, it's like the three crops that are grown together and that sustain a household. But if I'm going to look at the story just for the sake of a story, I would say if you're lonely, take a chance, and usually the chance works out for the best. So in her case, she was lonely, she took a chance, and then sure enough, she solved all of her problems. She's not lonely anymore, and she found her sisters. Okay, and I'm sure some of us have some experience in our own lives that prove this to be true. You know, you start a new school, you take a chance, you speak to someone, and then all of a sudden, now you have a friend. Cool, right? So chances like this usually work out for the best. Okay. So for the second part, this is where I'm going to have to start looking at what I'm doing up top and finding details from my text that support both now what I've claimed to be my theme, as well as that particular aspect of the story. So this one says, recall a detail about the character that is relevant to this theme. So I went back to the story and I perused through it and I was like, what is a detail about this character that is important to the theme? So I found this detail. It says, 3 sisters love one another very much and could not imagine living without the others. So we know that these 3, I'm going to highlight that just because it makes me feel better. We know that these 3 young ladies live together and they're very dependent on each other. So that kind of points out the fact that about being lonely. So she's never been alone before. She's always had her sisters. All right, so there's a detail about the character that's relevant to my theme. So if your theme for the medicine bag has to do with how the character is embarrassed or shamed of his heritage and his grandpa, if you want to pull out a detail that's relevant about his character, you would pull out a detail that demonstrates that he was embarrassed. So you would pull out a detail about him that proves about him being embarrassed. So you're going to try and find details that match that. So in this one, I'm looking for stuff that has to do about loneliness and taking chances. And then I'm going to keep going. Okay, so I'm looking for loneliness and details that have to do with chances. You guys, for the medicine bag, if you've watched the videos and you annotate like you were supposed to, you will have to be looking for themes for evidence where the boy is embarrassed by his grandpa or his culture or shamed. You're looking for some details about how he overcomes that embarrassment or shame, because there are a couple of places in the video, or not in the video, in the story where he does that, and those would be great details to use in here. All right. So I went back and I looked, and I don't like my goal here. Her goal is to live in peace. Learn to live without her sisters. All right, so she's trying to learn how to live without her sisters. Forgive me. All right. She's lonely, and the boy takes her home. All right, there we go. Perfect. I had to go fix some stuff. See, look, I noticed some things were wrong with mine, so I had to go fix it. So for this case, what about the goal? I'm going to put right here. She mourned deeply and thought she could not live alone without her sisters. So her goal is that she has to figure out how to live without her sisters. But this detail is important because she doesn't know how she's going to do it. Okay? All right. Now, if I look at the next one, it says, recall a detail that describes or tells about the conflict that is relevant to the theme. All right, so I had to go back in my story, like I told you guys, and this is what I found. So the interest in the young man, but her sisters are disappearing, and she is alone, or lonely, and I spelled lonely wrong. That's embarrassing. All right, so for this place, I found a detail that describes or tells about the conflict. So the young man who she's interested in felt sorry for her. I mean, because she's paying close attention to him. And he took her into his arms. So there's the conflict here. Her sisters are disappearing. This young man takes her from her home, and she's alone. So I went ahead and include there's a delightful surprise awaited her, just because it kind of leans into this resolution part. So this last part says, recall a detail that is part of the resolution that is relevant to the theme. So I'm looking for a part where a detail that kind of explains what happens when she gets to the young boy's house. So I went back in my story and I found another detail that I thought was useful. And this one's a little bit longer, but I liked it, so I pulled the whole thing. So in this one, it says the sisters were there in the lodge, safe and very glad to be united. So we have she finds her sisters, and then explains that they had been curious about the boy too. So they took a chance, and then they had decided to stay. So this both points out she's no longer lonely anymore, and that we've also taken a chance and it works out for the best. So I pulled all of that from my story. Now, the cool part about doing this stuff online like we're doing, the cool stuff about what we're doing online like this is that you can copy and paste straight from your text. So if you are looking for something and you can't quite find it, just go for it. Go copy and paste it, put it in there, and then it makes your life a lot easier trying to get this stuff done. So I hope this was helpful. So just real quick, remember you're going to pull out the character, the goal, the problem, and the resolution first. So you're going to pull out these important things first from the story. And then you'll go back and you'll pull details that match with your theme or that make sense with your theme that are relative to these four things. So remember, for the medicine bag, you're going to be pulling out stuff about how the young man was embarrassed or ashamed of his culture and how he overcame that, because the theme definitely has something to do with overcoming a shame and embarrassment. All right, I hope this was helpful. Please make sure you hit me up with any questions. Bye.